All right. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I hope everyone's having a good weekend and a good Sunday. Um, my name's Nimala.
My name's Abipri.
We are both interns for Hindus for Human Rights, and we will be your MCs today.
Uh, We're really excited to have all of you. And so just for like a brief overview of what HfHR does, we're a US-based nonprofit focused on advocating for, you know, interfaith dialogue, a lot of just like trying to focus on human rights in the United States and South Asia, really.
And um, and our essay prompt for the civil rights contest was, as a South Asian, what traditions of peacemaking do you find inspiring? Which I think is really relevant given the current political climate, because we should be focusing on being able to have these discussions despite our differences with one another. And especially going and focusing when we're talking about South Asia specifically, how that changes, because the way that we talk to fellow Americans isn't the same that we wait, like in the way that we talk to South Asians, but yes. Anyways, so with the keynote, we are so lucky to have Zara Chowdhury. Zara Chowdhury is a multi-hyphenate writer, producer, and educator from Chennai, India. She now lives in Madison, Wisconsin.
She has an MFA in creative writing and environment from Iowa State University and has an MA in writing for performance from the University of Leeds. She's taught courses in Hindi and South Asian cultures, protest poetry, and creative nonfiction.
Zara spent her first decade as an adult working in film, advertising, and media production, including for studios like Eros Entertainment, Red Chillies, and Vinod Chopra Productions. Her work has aired on Channel 5, National Geographic India, and on American television for Turner Classic Movies. Without further ado, Zara Chowdhury.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to speak here and be in community with this beautiful multi-generational group of humans on a Sunday afternoon. Thank you to Trisha for reaching out so sweetly, and thank you to Hindus for Human Rights who've provided such a solid sense of community and solidarity for me this past year, not only as my memoir about surviving and witnessing a genocide went out into the world, but as we in this world have watched a live streamed new genocide for a whole new generation. So I'd like to begin today by acknowledging and praying for accountability for the many violences and crimes that the people of Palestine are facing, but also acknowledging that all of us in the US stand on a soil of many violences, mountains of crimes against humanity and the natural world, that our lives, our communities, and our prosperity are built on theft from Native peoples and Black peoples' lands, bodies, legacies, languages, and faith systems. Yet they continue to resist, and so we must lend our voices to this chorus. With this prayer for accountability, I now sit here to speak with an incredible group of young people whose art I've had the good fortune of sitting with this past week, and whose imaginations for peace have lit a tiny but precious spark for me through another dark few weeks for our collective humanity. You see, I have a very complicated relationship with peace. Like most of you, I grew up in a home in a country where peace, tolerance, nonviolence, these words were most casually passed around like Diwali sweets and often proudly wielded as something that made us unique. I grew up singing grand annual poems to Mahatma Gandhi each October 2nd, and being that I was living in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, the place of his ashram, there was no escaping stories about the saint of Sabarmati, or Sabarmati ke Sant, as we called him. But even then, something about the idea of the peace Gandhi had proposed felt faintly mythological to me. You see, my reality differed greatly from these words and stories that filled my school and home life. I was a young Muslim girl growing up in a deeply divided city. Hindus and Muslims already in the late 90s in Ahmedabad lived in highly segregated communities. The regions in between our neighborhoods were often derogatorily called borders, as if we were two separate nations. One nation had malls and theaters and shiny new McDonald's in towns. Um, Mine had garbage piling on the pavements, broken streets, and people who were starved of dreams. My life was cut off from this shining promise of an equal and fair society because of my name and ancestral identity. And I had normalized this in the way people become used to being labeled and separated. Then in 2002, a violent massacre took place in the city of Gandhi. I was all of 16, perhaps the same age or a few years older than most of today's winners and participants. For 3 months, as people were burned and slaughtered, hunted and tortured in the most grotesque ways around me, simply for being Muslim, I cowered in my family's apartment, asking myself a very simple question. Where were the girls I went to school with? Why had none of them called? You see, I was very basic. I didn't think of grand ideas of world peace and histories and legacies in this finessed and eloquent way so many of you have expressed through your art. My worldview had come pre-narrowed, pre-conditioned to have small expectations, to only expect what a minority can from a majority group. So amid my people's slaughter, I only wanted to know why my friends, the girls I went to school with every day, didn't seem to care to pick up the phone and simply ask, how are you? Are you alive? And if you are alive, are you okay? So it is that 16-year-old's yearning that I bring to you today as we think of what peace can mean and what its tangible reality can look like. Is peace merely tolerance? Is it holding space for another's grief? Or is it looking at the root of things and praying perhaps even for justice? I was profoundly struck by the elders and ancestors some of today's winning entries were calling out to. Ashoka and Akbar, Andal, the stories of everyday commonplace resilience of Indian mothers and daughters and fathers and brothers. Bharatnatyam's ability to go beyond the story of the gods to that which makes us deeply flawed and human. A painting of an eye bursting with prismatic flowers. Dr. Mujibur Rahman's leadership of a student revolution in Bangladesh. I'm in awe of a new generation that are discovering these stories that I grew up with, but with fresh eyes, often unfettered by the hate that has captured too much of India's magnanimous width as a society. I now ask you from this unfettered and bold vision to imagine beyond peace. Imagine justice. What are some ways we could bring our lost ones home? What does it mean to offer reparation? How do you heal a wound beyond words? What does it take to hold a friend's hand, to pick up the phone, to say, I care, I'm here, I hear your silence and pain? All of you who made a piece of art today, you know what I'm talking about when I say artists pour themselves into the thing they're making. For a quiet window in our lives, nothing matters except that thing. When we obsessively draw or dance or chisel something out, we measure its integrity, we test it for power to hold our audience arrested, to leave them inspired. We're taking a thing from our bodies, our memory, our spirit, and offering it to the world. In the 7 years that I devoted to my book, some days I couldn't see the end. I couldn't find that reason to make art. When you have seen that other side of peace as I have, this soul-crushing violence, how do you wake up and make art from the broken self that you are? I would hear these whispers then from friends of mine, aunties and uncles, grand aunties and uncles, people whose whole lived memory was a nation built on a promise of nonviolence and tolerance and peace. And I would hear in their whispering voices the heartbreak of a friend lost to propaganda or hate, of a colleague who stopped wishing them for Eid, of a friend who now only spoke to them in awkward silences. I would sit back down at my desk each day and let these whispers propel me. Sometimes art is just that, taking your broken heart and repurposing it so someone else can feel hope, understanding, enlightenment, perhaps even inspiration to do better, to be better. leaders, governments, international law. I genuinely do not believe these are the source or providers of peace. I sat with my 16-year-old self for 7 years, asking her what did feel like the source. What would have made it all less awful? And the only answer I got from that Zara was, if only my friends had called. And so I must question now why they didn't. And I bring this question to you. What sort of courage and compassion would we need to imagine into the world if we truly want to break the cycle of hate we're stuck in? What sort of recognition of each other's wounds must we always carry with us so we don't inflict further wound? Is peace perhaps just that? Refusing to wound another? Could we go further and imagine a world where we held someone else's pain in our palms and brought our art and beauty and all of our spirit's ability for a crushing, all-encompassing love? Looking at the depth and passion in all of your work and in your faces today, I want to believe such a world is possible. I have to believe in you. I hope you will always compel me in these beautiful ways to believe in you. I hope you will always be the friend who picked up the phone and made that call. Congratulations to all of you. And as my elders always said to me, may Allah Ta'ala bless you and keep you on the path of Iman, which is intention, and Insaf, which is justice. May peace be upon you.
Thank you, Zara. That was really beautiful, and thank you for sharing. Um, our next, our next phase is for the judges, and so I'll do one introduction, and Nimla will follow up with the second. So first we have Dr. Shobha Sharad Rajgopal, and she is one of the founders of the Department of Ethics and Ethnic and Gender Studies at Westfield State University in Westfield, Massachusetts. She teaches courses on gender, race, and sexuality, and is the recipient of her Campus Research Scholar of the Year 2023. Her research and teaching areas are in post-colonial and transnational feminist theories, South Asian cinema, religion, globalization, and gender conflicts.
And we're so lucky to have with us also Nina Sharma. Nina Sharma's work has appeared in The New Yorker, Harper's Bazaar, Electric Literature, Women's Studies Quarterly, Long Reads, and The Margins, among other publications. She received her MFA in writing from Columbia University's School of the Arts and has been awarded residencies from Vermont Studio Center and St. Nell's Humor Writing Residency. Nina is formerly the program director at the Asian American Writers Workshop, and with Quincy Scott Jones, she co-created Black Shop, a column that thinks about the allyship between BIPOC people featured on Anomaly. So the way the Q&A works is that you can send questions in to us, but we already have a few questions to start out. And the first one is, what are your guys' writing process like in your own field, since we have so many different people working in so many different types of writing fields, not just creative writing, but also research writing? How is that process like for you guys?
Would you like me to start?
Go right ahead.
Okay. First of all, folks, I can't tell you how happy I am to see all of your bright young faces. I belong to another generation, I can see from all of you. And I was a journalist in India for many years before I came to the United States and got my doctorate. So a lot of my work is based on previous experiences in India, covering communal riots and bomb blasts in Bombay in the 1990s, and coming to the United States and then connecting it basically to feminist theory and praxis. So I write from a feeling of passion and anguish. You really, what you spoke about as the heartbreak that your elders referred to, because I come from a family where my mother, my grandfather, they were all Gandhians. So it's unthinkable to think of the depths to which we have descended today. So that's the place that I write from. And I'm also I can tell you that I'm also the president of the South Asian Feminist Caucus of the National Women's Studies Association. And I want to tell you this because this is very, very important. The National Women's Studies Association is the only feminist organization of the United States, apart from Code Pink, which I'm sure you've all heard of. It's the only feminist organization that has openly come out in support of Palestine and denounced the Israeli genocide. That's very important. And one of my first actions when I took over as the president of this caucus last November, in fact, was to draft a letter along with the board of, fellow founders of this caucus to express our feelings, our strong support of Palestinian rights and justice. So there you are. And I would also like to invite all of you to come and join our caucus and start attending this important conference in November. This time it's in Detroit. So you can imagine what an important place that is, because that's where we have the majority of the Arab American population. Yeah.
I can go next. I am so excited to hear about this conference, and thank you for extending that invitation. And I also just wanted to thank Zara for what a beautiful welcoming speech, and to echo that prayer for accountability and the need and the desire, the longing for a free Palestine. And I wanted to start there. When I think about my process, I was really taken with the idea of longing that Zara mentioned in her remarks, that longing of a 16-year-old, that yearning, I believe the word was yearning, of a 16-year-old girl to want a friend to call, to wonder why the call wasn't coming. And that's what I look for whenever I'm writing a personal story. I think every story should be guided by a feeling of longing, no matter how large or small you think it is, no matter how small. Sometimes I think it usually starts very small, and then we realize that it's much larger than we think it is. Following that longing is more important than anything else. And I think that longing is where the personal and political, I'm a personal essayist, so the self as a research subject and our research interests come together. And even kind of beyond that, I wanted to say, as personal essayist, I kind of go towards the things that I'm scared of writing, those longings that feel most vulnerable to me, because I think there's information there. But in order for me to endure in the process of doing that hard work, I have to locate what's joyful to me in that story I'm trying to write. And I always tell my students, I call it, what's the fun of the story? That's what I ask myself. And I really like to emphasize that that fun doesn't need to be, I'm sorry, I know we're in a very formal ceremony, but please excuse me as the humorist. The fun doesn't just have to be a fart joke or something like that. I'm so sorry. I like that type of body humor. Sometimes it is, but the fun sometimes can be something that no one else except you find fun or joyful. The fun sometimes is that we have survived and lived to tell. Have survived and are surviving, and you can locate that fun for yourself, and it can help you endure in the process of writing that story, of chasing down that longing and seeing both what's personally valuable and valuable to a whole public through it. So yeah, that's something I'm thinking about.
Thank you guys so much for, your depth in your responses. Our next question, and I think it's very relevant to today as well, but how do you consider peace when you look at your work and when you're writing, when you're advocating, and maybe it would be lovely to hear how your perception has changed over time, especially because you are from another generation and now there's a new generation as well. So we would love to hear how that perception has changed over time.
I don't know who you are addressing this question to. Is it to me?
The questions are just to everyone that's here, so anyone can respond, but also it's like a mammoth of a question, you know, like
Exactly.
how do you even begin to respond to something like that? So take your time.
Hmm.
Any thoughts are appreciated, especially because you guys have seen so much, done so much. Any thoughts are appreciated.
Okay, I can start by referring to Zara's question about why no friends called. That, just listening to that was just heartbreaking for me. I can just imagine how you felt, Zara, how all of you felt during that terrible time. Of course, I was not in Ahmedabad at that time, but I was in Bombay when something very similar took place as a reaction to the Babri Masjid events. And I was a news correspondent at that time from Doordarshan who covered the Bombay riots and bomb blasts. So I too noticed that a lot of people who actually felt very anguished about it were too afraid to speak. They had been, which brings up the question, are we a nation of cowards? Are we a people who are cowards, who have become so cowardly in the face of all the attacks? And I would say to some extent, the regime has succeeded in silencing a lot of people. Because look at what happened to all the young people and the older people who protested in Delhi, you know. So, yes, we have to think about how can you stand up to a regime that is openly fascist, you know. So because the Congress, I would say it had a lot of problems, but it was not openly fascist, you know, to the anywhere to the extent that this regime is right now. So yeah, I don't know, I think it is something that your generation has to take up now. Yeah, as to how you will face the current reality. I'd like to think that the last elections, I happened to be in India at the time that in May, when the election results were announced. And I felt a sense of hope that they lost their majority. That's fantastic. They never expected to lose it. And they were forced to cobble together a government by approaching other parties. That's a sign of hope, you know, that people are waking up. But that sense of hope needs to be constantly kindled and supported so that that little flame can grow.
And just to kind of bounce off of that, I was going to say that I think part of the way that that hope remains kindled is by through allyship and solidarity. And you know, immediately as Zara was painting the portrait of such a violently segregated space, just immediately made me think about Jim Crow America.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I write about in my book, what it takes, you know, what it means to build coalition with other BIPOC people. In particular, when I think about Jim Crow, I'm thinking about Afro-Asian allyship. And the importance of sharing our stories with each other, breaking those silences with each other is so important. And it also is the way that we you know, destabilize white supremacy. White supremacy's goal is to keep people of different ethnic groups apart, to keep Black America in the stereotype of problematic people, the problem minority, and Asian American people as they don't cause any trouble, model minorities. What does it, you know, what does they don't cause any trouble really mean? It means to not speak up, to not speak your truth, to not speak your pain and oppression. And if we can do that amongst each other. I love what was said at the beginning of how South Asians can talk to each other is different sometimes how we talk to America. And I think like, what is that America too? We can separate it out. Is different from the way we might talk to white America. Maybe it can be different in the way Asian Americans can talk to Black America. You know, there can be something really valuable of building coalition that way amongst people of color. And what does it mean what is that revolutionary act to hear one another's story, to hold space for each other's pain? Yeah.
Thank you so much. So one last question. I work for a newspaper, and it occurred to me that all of you are writers, right? And all of you are so accomplished in your fields. But I was wondering if there was a specific way you felt, especially with the state of journalism and freedom of speech in India today, and the access that we have to at least in America, to journalism and free speech, and how that changes when we're talking about India, especially because, Shobha, you mentioned that you worked for Doordarshan as a journalist, and that's really important work. And in America too, like, we're having a little bit of problem on college campuses. My college just passed a referendum that doesn't allow us to protest if we're making noise, which is a little ridiculous. But how do you feel seeing the state of journalism and free speech and creative writing in India today?
Well, I would say the social media has made a lot of inroads in that, but there are still some very good old newspapers and magazines which have still been carrying on the fight, but they've been taken over. I have friends who work for NDTV who've been really upset about how their organization has been taken over. I don't know if you've heard of Frontline. Folks, have you heard of Frontline? Outlook India? Caravan? Huh? Well, those magazines are still going strong, but they're not as widely read as they used to be because many newsstands don't carry them anymore. I'll give you just one example. I'd gone to a newsstand, and that too in the south of India, which, as you know, is far more progressive and where the far right has not made as many inroads. So I went to this newsstand. This is a few years ago, where I used to go for a long time to pick up my issue of Caravan and Outlook India. And I asked the man who was selling the books and newspapers, who knew me from a long time ago. I said, "Do you have the latest issue?" And he just brusquely said, "No, no, no, we don't carry that." And then there were a number of other people standing there. After they left, he called me back and he said, "Ma'am, come here. Chechi." He called me Chechi. And he said, "Please come here." And I said, "Yes." He said, "I actually wish I could carry it, but we are being scrutinized very closely, so our owners don't want us to carry that anymore." I mean, so it's a kind of censorship of a different kind, right? It's not that the government has said, especially the state governments, "No, you cannot carry it," but people are afraid. So as to what you said about the media in the United States versus the media in India, well, I'm sorry to say I do not agree that the media in the United States is very, democratic anymore. For example, where in the news media do you get to really see a criticism of of the genocide, that's going on? Nowhere. They're afraid to say anything. So I'm actually very furious that this is happening under the Democrats. If this is the case under the Democrats, what will happen if this becomes a Republican administration? Looks like their foreign policy, there is no change. And I'm disgusted with the New York Times coverage, which I have written to them about. And of course, my letters have never been published. And you might be interested to know that I write for Ms. Magazine. So Ms. Magazine, which I don't know if all of you know, it's a very famous feminist magazine, which was started by Gloria Steinem and her team in the early 1970s. They were very happy to publish my work as long as I was saying good things about the Democrats, you know. And I did. I spoke, I wrote about Kamala Harris, and I spoke about her. This is earlier, much earlier. First, when she was nominated for vice president 4 years ago, and now just before, she took over as the nominee. I mean, as their candidate, as the Democratic candidate. They were very happy to publish all that. But the minute I started criticizing the Democrats, they just stopped publishing my work. So where's the democracy? Where's the freedom in the United States? You'll see it in the independent media, like Democracy Now. But that is the independent media, the Nation, things like that. But as I said, that's not the mainstream media, not even the feminist media.
I agree. I also teach at Columbia, and I just want to applaud the work of the student journalists on campus. They're so brave, doing live coverage during the Hind Hall, during the police invasion of Hind Hall, bearing witness to that, and hearing their coverage and hearing the difference between the student journalist coverage that whole time period versus mainstream media is just astonishing. And I just want to say my total admiration for student journalists doing that work on my college campus and others.
Absolutely. And I think that was very well said. And for, all the students that are on this call, I hope that you're able to take away something from all of like the things that you guys have said. And I'm really sorry, but we have one more question. And it was, what exactly were like the overall themes of the essays that really impressed you, invited you to think more deeply about the topic? What of the essays were your favorite part about them?
I can go. As a personal essayist, the personal angle was just took my heart. I was just really this occurred in each and every one I read, each single one. How vulnerable each essayist made themselves on the page just took my breath away, and just also heartened me for the future to be able to dig that deep. To go, sometimes one of my teachers once said, to give your essays rather than a flat level of narrative, to give it a vertical dimension. To get that vertical was just so cool to see, and I admired it. And in particular, I saw that one of my favorite personal essays of all time is James Baldwin. That's the person that got me writing. And as we are talking right now, it reminded me of this James Baldwin quote, and each and every essayist that I read reminded me of this quote. I think worked from there. And he says, words like freedom, justice, democracy are not common concepts. On the contrary, they are rare. People are not born knowing what these are. It takes enormous and, above all, individual effort to arrive at the respect for other people that these words imply. And I was just impressed how each essay arrived just in that way, arrived to these grand concepts through very personal, through very tangible, through very like heart-driven, earthy entry points. And that just won my heart as a personal essayist. Yeah.
Let me just add to what you said, Nina. And that was so beautifully articulated. I really appreciate it. My point is, yes, I would also agree with what you said here. But I'll also say, remember I was talking about hope and how we need to kindle that spirit of hope in the younger generation, right? So that they will carry on the fight. Well, I saw that in all those essays, and it made me feel, well, again, such a sense of hope. Yeah. And let me add also that I'm so honored to have been invited to be a judge for this um, um, essay competition and to be on this panel, although I didn't know that you'd ask me to speak. Yeah. I wish you the very best. And I have to leave shortly. So I'd just like to remind you, please go to Facebook and go to South Asian Feminist Caucus of the NWSA. And you can join that group. You'll see all the things that we put up. And I'm going to put up something about your essay competition out there and on my regular page and on LinkedIn. So please do send me the recording if you have a recording of this afterwards. Yeah. And I'd like to say, folks, hats off to all of you.
Thank you so much for coming. We really enjoyed having you and hearing all that you had to offer.
Yes, I am so honored to be here with all of you because I'm literally just a college student. But that's not just you guys on the judges panel or the speaker panel, but also all of you who wrote and made art and submitted, because it is so important to continue to like nourish your creative flame. And I also love James Baldwin. He is my favorite writer. I actually have like a saint candle of him right there. And it brings to mind that quote of his that was like, I don't remember it exactly, but love has never been a popular movement. And that's what really holds the world together. And I feel like that ties everything that we've been talking about really well. Zara, your point to, I wish someone called, like that is, to call is to love, to check in with your friends is to love. And really to write and to participate in like a creative movement, that's also love. And I am just so honored because you guys are such creative minds and I look through your work too. And I'm like, all of you, thank you so much for submitting. Thank you so much for being here. And with that, we will move on to our middle school winners.
So first we have, okay. So first we have Rajiv Bharadwaj's essay on Role Model for Peace in the World, Harmony, Justice, and Democracy.
And next we have Riona Richards' illustration, Piece of India. And our third honorable mention is Rohan Packer's poem on peace. And now to introduce, to talk about our winners, we have a video from Pramila Jayapal, who is an American politician serving as the U.S. representative from Washington's 7th Congressional District since 2017. She serves as the chair of the Progressive Caucus in the House of Representatives.
I'm Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, and I'm honored to represent Washington's 7th Congressional District in the House of Representatives, where I also serve as chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the awards ceremony for the 4th Annual Essay, Art, and Multimedia Contest on Civil and Human Rights. Thank you so much to Hindus for Human Rights and the Dalit Solidarity Forum for organizing this contest and for inviting me to speak and help announce the winners. Before we get to that, I want to quickly touch on the theme of the contest of this year, peacemaking. When we look at the world around us, we often see conflict and violence, nations at war, tensions on the rise, and it is incumbent on us, those who focus on constantly striving for justice, to work toward peace. That is something that I try to do every day in Congress, whether that means handling international conflicts and finding a solution that brings peace and security to all involved, or passing legislation that lifts up working families and allows them to find peace in their daily lives without having to struggle to get by. Peace is something we should all be finding ways to achieve in every corner of life. And that is why I am so thrilled to see all of you, dozens of middle and high school students, taking up this work to demonstrate your knowledge of peacemaking and expressing it in the most beautiful ways that you know how. So thank you for being involved and for being a part of this incredible experience. Now, it is my honor to announce the winners of the contest, starting with the essay category. In third place, South Asian Peace Through the Millennia by Jacob Sudden. In second place, Ira Tiwari's essay on the anti-Sikh riots, Sufi traditions, and ongoing traditions of peacemaking. And in first place, With Andal Comes Grace by Lekha Kohli. Now for the art and multimedia category. In third place, Dia Lane's drawing inspired by the 10,000 for World Peace Assembly. In second place, we have a tie between Ania Taneja's Flowers of Peace illustration and Ashita Lahiri's illustration of Bangladesh protests. And in first place, Dikshita Jayaprakash's narrated Bharatanatyam performance. To all of those who participated, thank you so much for doing so. Your work is appreciated, it's so powerful, and it helps to ground us all in the work of peacemaking. It will continue to inspire those of us who work every day to achieve peace, and may it also push you forward in your efforts to continue to be peacemakers. Please keep up that mission and know that as you do, I will be standing alongside you in the halls of Congress every step of the way.
So now a little bit on each of the pieces.
In first place, With Andal Comes Grace, Lekha's essay reflects on the teachings of Andal, the Bhakti movement, and the communal practice of okay, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this.
Kudiyirakal.
Thank you. Illustrating how these South Indian traditions emphasize divine love, inclusivity, compassion, and compassion conflict resolution as pathways to cultivating peace, justice, and grace in the world.
Let me just say, as a fellow South Indian myself, I really love this take on Andal. It's really beautiful, especially the Bhakti movement, which originated in Tamil Nadu. So, beautiful work. In second place, we have Ira Tiwari's essay on the anti-Sikh riots, Sufi traditions, and ongoing traditions of peacemaking. Ira's essay explores the 1984 anti-Sikh riots and the resilience of communities that, despite violence, clung to traditions of peace and compassion, highlighting the enduring power of small, everyday acts of love and unity as a force against hate.
In third place, we have Jacob Sajan's essay, South Asian Peace Through the Millennia. His essay traces the history of nonviolence in South Asia through key figures like Emperor Ashoka, Emperor Akbar, and Mahatma Gandhi, showing how their philosophies built upon each other to shape a deep-rooted tradition of peace, justice that continues to inspire movements worldwide.
Just one more round of applause to all of our essay and poetry winners, and you will be published in American Kahani. So keep an eye out for that. And now on to art and multimedia. In first place, we have Dikshita Jayaprakash's narrated Bharatanatyam performance, which we also have the pleasure of viewing a little bit of. So we shall do that now.
This tradition of nonviolence, or ahimsa, has deep roots in Indian culture and as well as Hinduism's spirituality. And although Mahatma Gandhi popularized it through the revolutionary movement in India, it has been a huge part of who we are. In this next little excerpt, I will be summarizing what these pieces are supposed to entail and also its context in the Revolutionary War. The white man walks in. This is my land. All of this is mine. Look at our beautiful jewels. I want them. Grab. All mine. What is that over there? Who do you think you are? Well, let me grab all those jewels. And for me, look at yourselves. Who do you think I am? And you dare fight me?
And now in second place, we have Anya Dinaji's Flowers of Peace illustration and Ishita Lahiri's illustration of the Bangladesh protest.
And in third place, we have Dia Lane's drawing inspired by the 10,000 for World Peace Assembly. And that concludes our essay contest awards ceremony. Just a thank you to all our esteemed judges and everyone who helped make this possible. Ashwin Purnatambekar, who works at the University of Pennsylvania, Shobha S. Rajgopal, Westfield State University, Pranav Jani, Ohio State University, Anu Vedantam, Princeton University, Karthik Nair, Temple University, Vaishnavi Patel, New York Times bestselling author and lawyer, Nina Sharma, author, Vimal Kumar, multidisciplinary artist, and Seema Shakti, curator and visual artist.
Again, thank you all so much and congratulations on all of our winners and thank you for participating. Everything will be published on the HfHR website and on social media. And honestly, we're all so honored to have all of you guys with us. Every single one of you. Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed this event.
Take care.